So welcome everyone to the spring mini law series. Thank you all for being here. Today's panel is with four wonderful alums who are all in their 1L year of law school. I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just 1 minute. My name, though, is Nicole Park. I use she, her pronouns, and I work in career education, and I am the advisor for law, government, and public policy. So without further ado, I'm going to just call on panelists in the order that I see you and have you all introduce yourselves, give your name, pronouns, your class year, major. A couple of you have been working before going to law school, so maybe tell us what you were doing for work and then where you are now. And let's start with Jill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Foy. I graduated from Wellesley last year, so class of 2022. I majored in political science, and I'm currently a 1L at UNC Law in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Great. And Yumi, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yumi. I graduated from Wellesley in 2020, and I worked as a paralegal at a telecom company outside of DC for 2 years. Now I'm a 1L at Fordham Law in New York City.
Great. And Zoe.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe, she, hers, class of 2022. I majored in political science and Chinese language and culture. I went straight through, obviously, and now I'm a 1L at Georgetown.
All right, Marlon.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Marlene. I'm originally from LA, but I went to Wellesley and graduated 2021. So I've been a year, 2 years out. And I am now a 1L at UC Davis School of Law.
Back in California. All right, great. Well, I thought that just like to kick things off, we could have you all just choose one word to describe your law school application process, because a lot of people in this room are about to start it. So they probably like to know how you're feeling about how you felt about it. So we can go in the same order, or you can jump in however you'd like.
It's hard to condense it to one word, but I want to say this as like not scary as possible, but very chaotic.
So I would choose between marathon and dramatic. So for me, it's very long and it was very dramatic, chaotic, whatever you call it. Yeah.
Yeah, my word is long. It was a long process.
I would say tiring.
Okay, we're sensing some common themes here. So I thought, now that we have that sense, if you could maybe give us some of the details and a brief overview of like when you decided to apply to law school, when you first took your the LSAT, when you ended up submitting your applications, just give us kind of like some of the date high points so that people can get a sense of your timeline.
So I probably concretely, I was a little bit late. I think I concretely decided I wanted to pursue law school probably during the fall of my junior year. I started studying for the LSAT independently, probably around January of my junior year. Then I started actually studying in June of my junior year. And I took the LSAT in August and in October. And then I applied in October of my senior year. So junior to senior year, that's pretty much the timeline for me.
So my timeline was incredibly long. I first took the LSAT, I think winter break of sophomore year. No, winter break of junior year. And at that time I was just exploring, obviously didn't prepare that much and didn't get the score that I want. And I took it again my summer of junior year. I was doing Wellesley, Washington that summer. Still didn't get a score that I wanted. So I decided to go find a job and studying for the LSAT while working. And I took 3 other times, I guess last year, the year when I was applying. So I took the LSAT 5 times in total, over the duration of 3 years, I think. So obviously don't do what I did. And I applied late October of last year.
Okay, so I've been kicking around the idea of going to law school starting in my junior year at Wellesley. And I think that spring semester was when I really got serious about it. So from then on, I was very intentionally taking like doing LSAT prep. And I actually like continued from then, spent basically all of spring semester. I did have the benefit of that was really deep COVID times, so I didn't have much else to do besides LSAT prep. And so I took the LSAT. I really only took it once. I had an anomaly happen on my original test day. So there was a storm the night before, my internet wasn't working, I was getting logged out after 8 hours. After 8 hours of internet difficulties, I rescheduled. So I took it later that same cycle, and I only took it once because I was happy with the score I got. But then I moved on to the like resume prep, personal statement stuff, and I got all of my applications in before Thanksgiving. And then after that, it was just the waiting game of, some interviews, some other like random Zoom calls to demonstrate interest, and financial aid forms.
Yeah, so I think I want to say spring 2020 when everything happened with COVID, and I was back home. I think that's when I actually thought, okay, I think this is what I want to pursue. But I knew, one, being first gen, being low income, like I didn't know how to, like, what the process was going to be. I mean, I just had no clue. And I remember having a meeting with Nicole and being like, I don't know. And so then when I went back for my spring of senior year, spring 2021, I was like, okay, I need to get serious about this. And like, I was like, okay, I need to find like pipeline programs because I need help. And so I didn't really know, I didn't know anything about when I was going to apply. Like my goal was to take 2 years off and then go. I ended up only taking a year off because I got into a pipeline program. It's called the Munger, Tolles and Olson Fellowship. And through them, I had like a 9-month time fellowship thing where starting from March of spring of senior year, spring 2021 till December of 2021, I was in this fellowship, and they really helped me piece out a timeline. And so I started studying for the LSAT in March, officially starting of 2021. I took the June LSAT. That did not go well. So then I took the October LSAT, and then I applied. I submitted applications October, November. Yeah, I would say by Thanksgiving I was done. And that used to be considered early, but I think even September, October, you should submit. But because I was able to submit then, because by I would say June, around the time I graduated, I was already writing my personal statement, my diversity statement. I was figuring out my resume. And throughout that whole summer, I was just editing, all your statements. Yeah. And then what else do you have to do? LSAT, the statements. Yeah, just making sure that everything is perfect. You really have to be super detail oriented. You have to take a break, then go back, because you'll find more mistakes. It's a really tiring process, as I said. And then I started hearing back between literally till I was already out of school. It was crazy. But yeah, if that helps.
That's very helpful. And thank you all for starting to touch on your LSAT process. I do want to dig into that a little bit more because I know we have many people who are like kind of either in the midst of preparing or about to start preparing. And I know I'm getting lots of questions about it. I'm sure they'd like to hear from you. So a little bit more about how exactly you prepared, what resources you used, maybe like what some of the biggest challenges and some of the most helpful things were for you when you were preparing for the LSAT.
So like I said, I started studying probably like January of my junior year. And I started with Princeton Review, I think, self-guided study, which just personally, it did not work very well for me. I was pretty bad at just making it work for my schedule. And I was doing a lot of extracurriculars, as a lot of Wellesley students do. So even as hard as I tried to be disciplined, it kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. And I took a few practice tests and I was just not getting where I needed to get. So I got a private tutor, actually, a virtual private tutor through the service. I think it was called Varsity Tutors, which was good. But I think ultimately I'm just not a very great test taker. So that was the best route for me personally, was just shelling out the money and just saying, I hope it's worth it to get the private tutor, to get somebody to like kind of hold me accountable, to have things ready for our sessions, and to sit and take the tests with me. And that ended up being pretty helpful. Was there another question, Nicole? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just like as you reflect on that preparation, like maybe what you thought was the biggest challenge or what went well.
Yeah, I did not have like a graceful route to law school at all. I can confidently say now I never got the score I wanted to on the LSAT, but it all worked out for me perfectly. I think I was talking to a friend about it today, and I told her I was going to be on this panel, and she was like, we were talking about like different things that we should say. And I honestly, the LSAT is like the first test of law school. Like, granted, it's the test you need to get in, but it is like very much like alike most of the tests you will go through in law school, where it's like, it don't matter how much you studied all the time, or like, you can only do what you can to put yourself in the best position to take it. And what happens after that is pretty much out of your control. So I think that was a good introduction to that school of thought, because at Wellesley, a lot of the times it's like you work hard, you get what you want, and that's that on that. It's all merit based, but like it's not always like that for the LSAT. So all you can do is like put your best prep forward, and you really can't control much outside of that.
And you still landed where you wanted to be, which I'm really glad that people can see that.
Hello. So I was telling my boyfriend about being on this panel, and he was really surprised. He's like, wow, I can't believe you're invited for LSAT panel. So that says a lot about how not a great test taker I am, or I was. I definitely second everything that Jill just said about the LSAT and about law school application process. I think first of all, like we just need to keep telling ourselves, like no matter what score, what practice score that you got, you will go to law school, you will become a lawyer if you really wanted to. Like even if you didn't end up getting the score that I wanted, like I also didn't get the score that I was happy about, but I'm pretty happy with where I am now. So just want to say that in the beginning, and with my own studying journey, I think one great piece of advice that I got from people is actually to redo the old problem, especially with logic games and logic reasoning. So I know there are like about 100 practice tests available on the portal, on the LSAT portal, but don't like attempt to do all the new questions like at once. Really learn from your mistakes. For logic games, I remember it was like 4 games, and then the 2 of them were easier, the other 2 are harder. So one strategy is to really practice getting faster at and getting more accurate at the easier problems to save you more time with the harder ones. I think same approach can work for logic reasoning as well. I think that's something that I didn't know when I first started studying, and I ended up like wasting a lot of practice exam questions. So yeah, and the other thing is to really be patient with yourself. So the thing with my prep journey was that my score really decreased from the first time I took it to the fourth time. And that I was really, really depressed because I was getting like very similar scores, and I was studying for like 2-3 years already. I honestly at the time I wasn't sure if law school was still right for me, but I am very glad that I like just stuck it out and I took it the last time. And then that last time my score jumped 10 points from my previous one. So I think it's really about, you need to believe in yourself. You want to go to law school, you want to become a lawyer. Doesn't really matter what score you eventually got or what law school you get into. I think it's like everyone has their own journey.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's been a lot of great things from Jillian and Yumi. I will say that personally, all that I did for test prep was I used the Khan Academy free test prep, because that is such a great resource. They work with LSAC. And again, it is completely free because I was not in a position to spend money on like test prep. And so it was such a good thing to have that. And what's awesome is that they break it up. What I would do is like, they break it up into very like small modules. So I would do one a day. And I would like dedicate like 20 minutes and just try it out. And then I would do like once every few weeks, I'd sit and I'd do a timed practice test, which is also, it was good to do it like on a screen in a very similar manner, because you need, again, getting that endurance, which is something that's going to follow you into law school, taking practice exams. You need to get used to the feeling of sitting in front of a computer for a couple hours taking a test. And so, like, I think it was Jillian who said that this is like the first test of law school. It's a huge skill and a huge advantage to have. So that's my big advice. And I will also say, like, be strategic with the amount of exams that you're taking and like how you're spacing them out. Because at the beginning, it's not going to be helpful for you to sit and just take like one practice test day after day after day. It'll be much more helpful to break it up and try to understand where you're coming from, what you're struggling with, and really analyze the problems. But as you start getting closer, start taking them with more frequency. So you get used to the like broad picture. So it's like you build up to it. You don't just go straight into like, let me flog myself with practice exams.
Yeah. Okay. Ooh. So I guess I'll talk about materials I use. So I did the Khan Academy because I was free. And then I got Power Score books through the fellowship. And then I basically applied to, so I didn't do 7-stage, but there's like a thing with 7-stage where like you can apply, and if you get like the LSAC fee waiver, I think it's only $40, and I think other people I know did that, and they said it was really helpful for them. I got books through Nicole, which was great. And then so different testing companies have different scholarships. So if you apply and you get, maybe you won't get like, oh, an actual class, but they'll be like, you know, we really like you, but we can't offer you a class. We'll give you like free books. And so literally that's what I did. I applied to a bunch of random stuff. And then so I don't know how many of y'all identify as first gen or low income, like any, yeah. I'm sure you've heard about the Trials program. So Trials is like super competitive. I like applied, I was like a semi-finalist, but I didn't end up getting it. But they emailed me after and were like, hey, like, we still want to offer you like some resources. I also got like, I can put it here, but like the LSAC portal has a bunch of this stuff, but I know, I was like on random Facebook groups from like conferences, and other people like someone posted like this drive that had like PDFs of different textbooks. I don't know if anyone has come across this, but somehow I had found it. And let me see if I can put the link on, but that's what I use. I just use a bunch of random stuff because I didn't know what I was doing. So you can do that, but at the end of the day, you have to learn how to make use of the resources you have and have access to. So I think because of that, I felt it was good to know how different companies like approach things and trying to figure out what works best for you, because like there were some, but like, I don't know, Manhattan Prep, like some people really like how they teach or whatever, like that wasn't helpful to me. And so I felt like, oh, it was better for me to do like, I don't know, you just have to figure out what works for you. But of course that comes with like money sometimes. So it's just really hard. I mean, I'd be happy to share my score if anyone wants to know, like if y'all want to ask later, but like, I did not, like, I think the first time I took it, I got like 140 something, like, it was just not, I couldn't finish the test. And one thing I will say is that just like the LSAT, and as other people have been hinting, like in law school, the exams are very much a racehorse. Like you have to be like super fast, super that. And so I would say if you are a student that maybe struggles with that, and maybe it's not just that you're just like a bad test taker, but it might be something actually to do with like your own like mental function, which turns out it is for me, which I just learned. Figure that out before, because then you can apply for accommodations. You can actually figure out if this is something that it's nothing to do with your capabilities, but just like how you were born. So I would say one, figure that out now, and then adapt your LSAT prep based on that information. So then by the time you're putting yourself in the best place possible. Another thing I would like to say is that while I was a student at Wellesley and I was prepping for the LSAT stuff, it was during like COVID, right? So everything turned virtual. So turns out my computer was too old and I couldn't afford to buy a new computer, and my computer couldn't handle the, what's it called? The like program that they use to take the test, because my computer was so old. So if this is your case, or the other issue I had was like, I live in an apartment in LA with a lot of people, with my grandparents. Like I don't have my own desk, I don't have my own room. So I needed to find a place to take the exam, and I was no longer at Wellesley, so I couldn't just take it like at Wellesley. And so they have accommodations where they can send you a tablet and you can take the exam through that tablet. And they can give you $125 refund, like for you to book a hotel or an Airbnb. So those are things to keep in mind if you're a student that is in the same position as I was. That being said, you do take risk, because doing it from the tablet is very different than like doing practice exams on your computer or on whatever you have been doing. And also like I had an issue where the second time I took it, I was at a hotel room, and there was an issue with the internet, and then they were like vacuuming the entire like second half of my exam, and it was really bad because I'm like it's hard for me to be attentive. And so there are certain risks associated with that, but just try to put yourself in the best position possible, because like as Jillian said, like it's really no matter how much you do, it's like in that moment so many things can go wrong, and like you just have to like figure, just do it. I don't know. So hope that helps.
So much great advice, and thank you all for being really open about your stories. I think it's super important for people to hear all the different ways that you can get to law school. I dropped a couple things in the chat since Marlene mentioned the pipeline program that she did. I wanted you to know that there are a ton of pipeline programs, and there is a pretty good directory of them online. So I dropped that in the chat. One thing that we offer now that is kind of new this year, and so most of you didn't benefit from it, but I have bought a whole bunch of Power Score books and Mike Kim's LSAT trainer books, and I have them in the Career Ed office. They're available to borrow. There's a link to the Google form for borrowing those. So just know that there are resources if you need help requesting testing accommodations or applying for an LSAC fee waiver. Let me know. I'm happy to walk you through any of those things. But I wanted to ask you all, since you all sort of touched on like, most of you kind of landed about where you wanted to land, like regardless of what happened with the LSAT. So I wanted to ask your thoughts on like, just now that you're on the other side of this process, do you have any opinions on like how much or how little your LSAT score ended up mattering in the process? And if you have any thoughts on what aspect of your application you think maybe had the most significance?
Yeah, I'd be happy to touch on this because I think I had a very, I don't want to say untraditional, but like chaotic and very strange path to UNC. Like I said, I like to be fully transparent about this because like I feel like you might not hear these stories that often because it's such like the law school competition begins with the LSAT. So everybody's like always neck and neck. I think I got a 153 on my first time taking the LSAT, which is not what I wanted. Studied, took it again, got a 152. And I really, really, really wanted to go to UNC. Like I wanted to go back home because I'm from North Carolina and I wanted to get the in-state tuition. It's a really well-ranked school. So I said, Nicole helped me put together like an addendum explaining like why I didn't get what I wanted to get. And I just sent off my applications anyways. And it was like, they'll take me if they take me. It is what it is. And I got accepted to, I think, one school before Thanksgiving even. I think I got accepted to George Washington before Thanksgiving, but was waiting on UNC and was sure it was going to happen. I got put on application hold at UNC, which I didn't even know what that was, in December. And basically it was just like, I guess, a glorified wait list. And then I got waitlisted in April. And I didn't even get into UNC until I think like early July during the summer. So very, 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 very late. And now it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Like nobody cares how you got there. All that matters is that you're there. I know people who got in like in October. We're all sitting next to each other in the classroom, going to all the same classes and stuff. It literally doesn't matter. So I think that's just the moral of the story. It literally does not matter how you get there, as long as you get there where you want to be. And while I would not necessarily advise playing the waiting game as long as I did, because I had like a whole lease for Wake Forest, like paid both seat deposits and was like, this is my dream school. So I guess I got to take the opportunity. But I kind of harassed UNC, like to make it known that I actually wanted to go there. I was like, you accept me today, I will enroll today. Like no games, I mean it. So I'd like to think that that kind of had something to do with it. Just being persistent, updating the school if anything happens with you. I think I sent an update about like my extracurriculars and like my grades and things like that. That stuff matters because when it comes to you and somebody else, they might want to move off the wait list because they had like a crisis a few years ago. So everybody's being very, very, very intentional about who they're letting into schools. When it comes between you and somebody else who maybe got a similar score or whatever, they're going to look at who was persistent and who showed that they wanted to go there, who had the more intentional personal statement or diversity statement. So putting effort into those things, because you can't fully control the LSAT, you can only control the materials that you pour forth after that point. I think that's what made the difference for me.
The way Jill approached the whole like waitlist and everything with UNC was like textbook perfection, like absolutely beautiful. Listen to every word she just said.
So for my experience is that I feel like the piece that mattered the most in my application was probably the LSAT, because the schools that I ended up getting in are the schools where my LSAT score is either at or a couple points above their median. I think that has to do with, first of all, I'm an international student. So when I apply to public schools, I'm not like in-state citizen. And also I'm not, I guess I wasn't considered as like underrepresented minority. So that doesn't apply to me. And my work experience was just paralegal work. So maybe half of people applied to law school worked as a paralegal before. It's not something that made me stand out. And I thought I had a pretty compelling personal statement, but unfortunately, I feel like from my experience or for people with similar background as me, I feel like LSAT is something that kind of not like determine, but play a huge role in terms of what school you ended up getting in. I want to share this because I think this will be helpful to know in terms of deciding what school to apply, what school to target. So I applied with a 167. And at that time I was like, wow, like the score wasn't too bad. I was only like a couple points short to the medium score of like XYZ school. I was just gonna like apply to all of them. But I think the way LSAT or law school admission games works, sometimes it's a number game. Like they want certain number of people above their medium so that they can maintain a higher LSAT medium score to boost their ranking. So just have to be pretty realistic in terms of where you apply to, unless you have some advantage, like you come from a non-traditional background, or if you are like in-state resident. Otherwise, I feel like sometimes it's better to just apply broadly. When you're choosing which school to apply, don't pick and choose too much. You have to wait until you get your offer to choose. So my experience was that I did a lot of like networking coffee chat like before I applied. Like I was like cold emailing, reaching out to alums on LinkedIn, like people who went to these law schools I'm interested in. I was like, okay, can I speak with you to get your perspective on this X school? They were all super nice. A lot of people got back to me and chatted. But then at the end, I felt like what determined your acceptance mostly was still like kind of your application materials. So yeah, showing interest is definitely important. I think it's more important, like the interest factor is more important like after you like got in or after you hear back from the school, like if you're like waitlisted. But before that, like just put all your efforts into your application materials, like your essays and preparing for interviews and all that.
So I feel like so you guys might experience this. I definitely experienced this. You kind of never know what's going on in the heads of the admissions office. So like, I got like an awesome LSAT score. I got a 178. I only got into like I got into 2 schools off everything else I was waitlisted for, or I was rejected from. So you can put a lot of pressure on the LSAT. It's not everything. And I think what got me to Georgetown, a place I was waitlisted at, was demonstrating interest. And was making every time that they had an info session about waitlists, I was there. I was sending emails. I was sending letters of interest, updated letters of interest, and just making sure that they knew that I wanted to be here.
Okay, can you all hear me? Yeah, okay. I think I was buffering for a second. Okay, so I actually just pulled up like my tracker because honestly, I was like, since the semester started, this has all gone down the drain because it was traumatic. But okay, so for me, I applied with a 155 LSAT. I applied to 28 schools. And I'll explain my reason for this. So I knew coming in that I was not going to be applying with a high LSAT score, or at least for like the schools that I wanted. I knew I was not going to have like work experience. I mean, I took a year off, but during that year, I was abroad teaching English in Spain. So it's not really like I did that for myself. So I didn't really have, like, as you know, people are mentioning this, like, oh, like cool background. Oh, like I was a teacher and now I'm a lawyer, or like want to be a lawyer, or I was in tech and now did this. Like I didn't have that sort of story. I had my story and that's what I told. But yeah, I felt like I wasn't, I just felt like those were the things I lacked. And I think it was representative of like what my decisions came out to be. So I was waitlisted at over like, I don't know, probably I got into a third of my schools that I put down. I got rejected by a third, and then I got waitlisted by a third. A lot of the schools I was waitlisted at were schools that were like my top choices. For me, I knew I wanted to be in California. That being said, I still applied to a bunch of other schools all around the country. And the reason I did that was because, one, I didn't have the strong LSAT score. And I know that we're trying to give the message that it doesn't matter, but it does matter, especially I think when you come from a certain position. The higher LSAT score you have, the higher negotiating power you have for one, financial aid, two, for just even acceptance. Because if you feel like you don't have like certain strengths in your admissions, like application that maybe other students have, like that could be the difference. And it sucks, but that's literally how elitist and like how messed up like this whole thing is. And especially to keep certain people out, that tends to be people of color, women of color, like just all these different groups that haven't traditionally been allowed in this field. So that being said, for me, I think, well, now they're switching it, right? Because I think after 2025, like you don't have to apply with an LSAT score. So really take that into consideration. But if I were to do it again, I feel like I would have waited to apply till I got a higher LSAT score. But I was done and I was like, I don't care anymore. Like I just want to apply. And so I'm so sorry. I'm going off tangent. What was it again? Just to get back on point.
Just keep going. You're great.
Okay. So, so that being said, I applied to so many schools because I knew I didn't have those advantages, those things to my advantage. I mean, sure, if I would have gotten a higher score, that would have, you know, those wait lists could have been acceptances. And okay, so then LSAT, applying. One thing I want to say is apply broadly, like apply to schools. And I know it costs money, but like, if let's say you apply to a school, like I didn't want to go to like University of Michigan. I didn't want to go to University of Wisconsin because I knew I wanted to be a practicing lawyer in California. That being said, I still applied because let's say if you get in and that school, like my friend, he got into Wisconsin and they give him a full ride. He didn't want to go there, but at the end of the day, he was able to use that as negotiating power for a school he actually wanted to go to. So you have to keep these things in mind. Like, yeah, there's just so many factors. I hope this is making sense. And if not, like you can talk to me and I will further explain, but apply broadly, even if you don't have the highest LSAT score, like still go for it, but it does matter. And I would say, let's say if you are waitlisted, I hate the wait list like so much, y'all. But and I'm so happy, like, you know, my fellow panelists like were able to get out of the wait list for their schools and like their first, you know, high choice of schools. I unfortunately I waited until like I think September, like this year. And I wasn't able to get into those schools. But if you are playing that waitlist game and you got waitlisted, let's say in January, one thing you can do between January and April is like take the LSAT again, which sucks, I know, but if you can show that you got like a higher score, that helps with the, not just the interest, but like, oh, I have more to offer now. Or you can say, oh, I got hired for this new position, or I got promoted, like little things like this that can like show them that you're working to like, you know, be a better applicant. Yeah.
That's also helpful. Perspectives too, I think is really valuable for people. So thank you all for your willingness to be open. I recognize that for some of you, it's like reliving a very not fun part of your life and that you're doing it for the good of the Wellesley community. And we just, I know all appreciate that so much. So thank you. I personally am going to disappear at 3:45 because I have to run, but I know that our wonderful panelists are going to run your Q&A when I disappear. So I'm going to ask one last question and then you'll see me go away. But please, at that point, like I'll stop recording. You all can take it where you want to. Please, everyone, be like open and honest with your questions that you have. So my last question for you all, I wanted to switch gears just a little bit away from LSAT and to talk about, like you all mentioned how it's like a marathon and it's tiring. So I wanted to ask, how did you juggle the application process with other priorities in your life? And do you have any advice for how to do that?
I think that was a really good question. I know for me, I was juggling being in a sorority, being on the lacrosse team, and I think being like the GM of L Table. So not ideal circumstances. And like, I think like in terms of extracurriculars, I was like maxed out. And I think the biggest way I helped myself was doing as much as I could before the school year started. So like, yes, L Table. Getting as much done as possible, like personal statement stuff, diversity statement, like just make it as like easy on yourself as possible, and also doing it as early as possible before the school year like really ramps up. I think would be my biggest piece of advice. And like, if there was anything I did right, it was that.
I think one way I think about balancing with my other responsibility is to really find pleasure and find, I guess, leisure from the other things I'm doing. Like, I feel like everything else felt a lot easier compared to the LSAT. So it was fun going to office, interacting with my coworkers, so I don't have to think about the stupid logic games. So that way, even if I didn't really have a lot of time outside of work and LSAT, I was still able to, I guess, relax and also just find other satisfaction from life when you're hitting a roadblock in the LSAT prep process. So you can always tell yourself, at least I have a job, at least I'm doing pretty well in these other aspects of my life. I also picked up like new hobbies. I started like long distance running. I started taking Taekwondo classes when I was studying for the LSAT. I feel like those other things also helped, and it really especially helped you brainstorm your personal statement, your essays, think about how you want to tell your story. So yeah, don't make the LSAT your only thing in your life.
Yeah, I will say I wish that I had gotten my personal statement and those written components done a little sooner, because I was still doing them in the semester and it was hard. I was also involved in a lot of extracurricular, and that was something I would change. So please follow Jill's advice and not my path. But also kind of to Yumi's point, I think something that I did that was actually pretty helpful was that not many people knew that I was in law school, which means I didn't have to talk about it with every person I like hung out with. And this is like, you know, take this advice or leave it depending on your personal preference. But I did not want to be steeped in the application process. I wanted to be a person outside of it. So I would say keep it close to your chest within reason. Talk to, you know, Nicole, talk to, you know, get your recommenders out, but with your friends, be yourself outside of law. And that's also advice to keep in mind when you're in law school, is keep your identity outside of being a law student.
Yeah, I would say, wait, I already forgot the question. I'm so sorry, y'all. I just had class, so I just came out of tort law, so I'm like in and out of it. What was the question? Like what?
I think it was like kind of just how did you keep everything straight, like, and keep your sanity during application?
Yeah. I feel like I didn't. So I would say maybe, yeah, one thing to not do is like make it your whole life. I was also just going through a lot emotionally. I had just graduated Wellesley, and it was just, I don't know, COVID was still going on. And so I just had a lot of stuff at home. And while I was like the summer that before I left to Spain and I was like doing these applications and stuff, it literally became my whole life. And I think maybe that could have been a factor as to why like I just couldn't better my LSAT score, why I couldn't yeah, I don't know. So I would just say listen to what they're saying. Don't make it your whole life, because that's kind of what I did, and it came to my detriment, I think. So yeah. Also, I think now it's a Q&A session. Should I stop the recording?